All right, so this is about the human-centric design, part two. The expected length is 60 minutes or less. The feedback could be 15, and it's going to be English in delivery mode. So just going over the contents and see what we're going to go today. So this one is a bit what we call the exploratory in nature. Like the first one was a bit of an introduction. This one is going to explore a couple things in a bit more detail. So we're going to start off with an interesting video talk from Don Norman. And then we're going to give a very small introduction to Figma and a couple cool tricks. And then we're going to dive into some usability, heuristic rules. So that heuristic rules are the rules that has been shared with you before when the introductory calls. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the links again. So just a head start to begin with, and a reminder of the user, the importance of, well, that one is a bit error. So this should be like this. If you have the UX, forget about this. If you have the UX and you take out the U, it becomes the X. And you probably know that X is something you do not do. It means a negative inference. So take out users from the UX, and what you get is something you should not do. So that's a reminder of how important it is to have the users involved in the process of UX. And this is a very interesting video from Don Norman, who is considered a messiah of human-centered design and probably responsible for a lot of cool things that has been happening at Apple. If you're using Mac OS or Mac or even an iPhone, he probably has a very good influence on it overall. So let's see what he has to talk about.
The principles of human-centered design apply even if you don't follow the process of human-centered design. But what are the principles? And the first one is the human-centric. Focus on the people that whatever you're doing is intended, whether you're doing service or product or organizational structure or.
Right, just to pause a little bit, I'm going to copy this link for people who are watching online. We probably don't have access to tab audio, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste that on the message so that you can also have a shot at it. So going back to the video, just play it from YouTube and start over again.
Apply even if you don't follow the process of human-centered design. But what are the principles? And the first one is the human-centric. Focus on the people that whatever you're doing is intended for, whether you're doing service or product or organizational structure or new way of stocking the warehouse or breathing on shelves, whatever you're doing, always think of the people and all the people, not just the people who say you are going to retrieve the items you put in, but the people who have to put the items up there in the first place. And if you're in the healthcare system, you have to think about patients and their families and the physicians and the nurses and also the medical personnel and the technicians. And for that matter, we do scheduling and cleaning the place. You have to think of it as a system and look at all of the components. That's the second important thing. Find the right problem. Most always when somebody gives me a problem to solve, I refuse to solve it. But it's not the right problem, it's the symptom of the problem. And I want to solve the fundamental basic problem, because if I can solve the basic problem, guess what? The symptoms disappear. But that's not always so easy. It can take a lot of time. Even though I argue strongly, you should always try to solve the fundamental root problem. Sometimes it's okay just to solve the symptoms. And finally, you have to think of everything as a system. Everything is interconnected. So if we solve this tiny little piece, well, that's kind of nice, but Sometimes optimizing each of the small pieces gives an inferior result. Optimization on the local does not mean global optimization. And so we should always be thinking about the big picture. What is the final result looking at that? And user experience is always the most important component. Because take a camera. What's the camera about? All those controls? No. The camera is just a tool to get the real user experience, which is the experience that you're enjoying. The movie, the video, the picture. It's the end result that matters. And so we should be focused on making it easier for people to get to the end result. You don't have to focus on the details of the tools. Those have to be understandable and useful. Remember, the important thing is the real goal of the people who use our products.
All right, good one. So following up with, okay, close the YouTube tab. Just to follow up on, so just trying to draw some takeaways from the video. The first thing it says that the optimization at the local does not mean optimization at the global. It means if you have a big system, there is a tendency to look at every single component of it. Look at the a very good camera, as he said, and then to make a camera, you need to have a very good lens. You need to have a very good processor, and you need to have a good battery life. And there are so many internal things that needs to be done right for that device to be functioning well. However, getting all those things right and making the best of all those things, using the best CPU, getting the best lens possible, and putting the best battery on the camera does not still mean it's going to be the best camera for the people. And that's what he says, that optimizing every single part does not guarantee a great user experience. Despite the technical excellence of things, it could still be a very difficult product for the user to use, for the camera user to use. It could be like the shape or like something else that you haven't quite optimized, or you couldn't quantify, or you couldn't test. You put the right parts, right components, best of all things, but still optimization of all this local stuff does not mean it will result in a great experience for the user. As he said, it is the end result that matters. If the user isn't happy, doesn't matter if you have the best system in place. And once again, it's the emotional aspect of things that matters a lot. User experience is not a science, it's a process. It's an iterative journey, and you have to take on it. You cannot treat that as a technical, logical problem that you need to solve. It's a journey that gets better with iteration, interaction, and feedback. Another thing is, if you make a change, that change, as you said, affects the experience for a whole system. As you said about the hospital, if you make a change, say, how the triage is done. Now, the triage process, when someone comes in and you take the patient in, you admit that patient. Now, imagine the triaging process is a priority queue for an engineering term. If you are into Algo and DS, you probably know what a priority queue is. Now, if you treat that as an engineering problem and then have the best algorithm possible, the priority queue to triage the urgency of situation. If someone comes to you with a cough and someone comes to you shattered in pieces, like bones broken and everything's really bad, and now you try to come up with a system that's going to optimize that experience. Both your focus is the patients. You try to create a better experience for the patients. That is your end goal. Now, even though your end goal is to optimize the patient experience, you have to understand that it's an interconnected system. You trying to optimize the patients also affects the whole hospital. It optimizes, it affects the nurses, it affects the doctors, it affects the technological processing, it affects the whole hospital. So just because you're trying to optimize for the patient, you cannot just have an assumption that, okay, the patients are having a great experience, everything else is going to be good, and unaffected. That's not how it works. Everything is an interconnected system, and you have to count the whole thing in it if you want to deliver a great experience to everyone. And that's the key takeaways from the video. There are a couple other things. We're not going to go into too much detail for that, but that's the whole essence of it. I'm just going to switch things around a little bit because what I'm going to do is, before we dive into the usability heuristics for user interface design, I think it's feasible that we learn something a bit more cool in the process to make it a bit more interactive. So what I'm going to do is give you an introduction to Figma. Now, those people, those of us who are very much into design already know what a Figma is. It's a design tool. It helps you prototype designs. It helps you fail fast. It helps you develop in a way that's going to save you time, and it helps you catch things early in the process. Now, let's see if we can do a little bit of interaction on it. So if you go to figma.com, you probably have to sign up. So I'm going to figma.com. It's an online tool. There is an Electron desktop app you can download, but that is how a Figma interface is going to look like. Now, to demonstrate a very cool thing, Figma can be used for so many things. It can be used for prototyping, drawings, even even for video games. They use Figma prototypes to kind of demonstrate things early on. But today, we're not going to go into any more of those details. This is a cool trick we're going to show you so that's going to help you in your job. Now, just to give you an overview of the problem we're trying to solve, let's see. So imagine this is it's called the Campbell, right? Campbell. So this is the Campbell thing we use for whatever. This is an internal tool for Craftsmen, and we use that to get leaves approved and so many other things. Now, the goal for the demonstration is, it's not a design, we're not going to redesign these things, or we're not going to find faults within these things. But look at that as maybe a dashboard. Say, if you're working at a team, imagine this to be your work. And now you want to change some things around. Maybe you have an idea to change. Maybe you have an idea to change this thing, or you just want to move these things around a little bit, or you want to change this, or you want to get rid of the delete button. I'm not saying we do that. This is not a recommendation on the Campbell. This is just to point out strategies. Now, the problem I think a lot when I'm working is when you go to work and then have a discussion about it. I mean, some people just look at the screen and say okay, let's move the overtime to the bottom. Let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, there's the search box. Why do we not move to the bottom left? And you communicate like this. It gets very confusing. Like, you want to change the color of the approve button. Let's do it with the black background and green something. You say stuff like that. And maybe move that somewhere else, maybe on the bottom left, but not too left, a bit left, but not too right, a bit right. Stuff like that is very confusing. You're not able to communicate design ideas to people. And instead, you verbalize something that cannot be, design cannot be communicated in verbal terms. So what do you do? Well, there is a simple trick. There is an extension. I'm afraid this only works in Google Chrome, which I really don't like, but I have to use that extension. It's called the HTML.to.design. You can Google it, you can download it. You can just Google download HTML to learn. And there is. And you go to Google Chrome. And the Chrome store, you just go ahead and add that to Google Chrome. It doesn't have it for Firefox. Okay. Now, once you have that in place, it's very easy to grab anything in Figma and then communicate stuff. Once again, this is not a journey to redesign or provide recommendations for any platform. So what are you going to do? Let's say if you want to just communicate design ideas for this, my request, and the boxes that's happening. What you have to do is just once you have that installed, you could take the full page, or you could just select the screen section that's going to give you access to that area of text. So I'm going to take the full page. All right. And you have a file with an extension of H2D that downloads on your computer. You go back to Figma, and Figma, you have to install that plugin. I already have that installed, so you can. If you don't have it, you have to go to the file, this thing, go to Manage Plugins, search for HTML. The Figma search is very bad, so you have to be very specific about it. .to, design, and there you go. Okay, this one's already installed for me. So you open that up. Remember at Campo, we exported the whole page. So now we're gonna have to import the design into Figma. So there is this whole thing you can do. You just click on it. And no, just one thing in mind. When I tried this before, it has some missing fonts. My system doesn't have some of the fonts being used with the Campo. So some of the text might appear a bit gibberish, but that is not a problem with Figma of the two. So when I import it, you might see some bad text, some issues with the text alignment, but that's definitely, as I said, if you install those, it's going to take away this problem, as it said. All right, there you go. And it says it's missing fonts. So what you have to do is just install those. I'm not going to do those, but we do have a very reasonable, if you can ignore the text, we do have a very reasonable reproduction of the design. Now, imagine, okay, you have a crazy idea, and let's say you just want to move that thing somewhere else. Well, it's not, well, I'm not going to move that thing, maybe resize that a little bit. And look at that, this is so easy. It's so much better than trying to communicate. Okay, can we increase the size of the search bar a little? This is so much better communication in detail. So no more like scream at the screen and then, okay, we already have a. Now imagine we have changed the maybe stuff with the approved. All you have to do is just go and, okay, you also have the colors. So maybe a different colors then. And there is a different color. And you can even have hash codes and change the background of stuff if this is something you really want to do. You have so much to work on. Maybe I'm going to change that ugly one. And just black. It doesn't take time at all. It's not scary. It's easy peasy. And once again, I said, communicate design in design. Do not communicate design in text. That's just one way to get used to this whole thing and maybe use that. You can go to a dashboard, any page, and export that. You could export different parts and look at if you're familiar with layer-based design on the left, it has every single component very nicely spaced out. What else you need? Not even CSS changes. So Figma can be very, very cool. In the feature classes, we can even test interactions. Like what happens when you click on this? You might be wondering, oh my God, okay, I'm gonna rather code this out. But as we go along, we can see that even that thing is so easy in Figma. You can even have interactions within the Figma. What happens when someone clicks the approved? How does it change? It takes few clicks. I'm not going to show that today, but it's just as easy as importing that design. So nothing to be scared about. Design can be fun. All right. So enough with Figma, a bit more talk. Let's see if we have something. Oh, where's Firefox? Oh. Okay, all right. Okay, so back at the slideshow, we're gonna go back at the 10 usability heuristics for user interface design. This is provided by the same Don Norman, not Don Norman. What was his name again? Okay, yeah, Don Norman. And he gave this very detailed guideline that I gave you as a handout. So I'm just gonna go and paste it back at the link, and all right, so that you can have access to it as a reference. I'm just gonna open that up. And he gave us 10 very cool guidelines to how a good interface can be designed. Now, if you just look at it and if you try to understand it, it might be a bit difficult. Like the visibility of system status. It says something about being communication, but it doesn't go into very much detail. So what I'm going to do today is just take one rule and try to explain it. So I randomized it and I picked the rule 5, the error prevention, and maybe try to go in a bit details, how we can prevent errors or even optimize the error handling experience for the user. Now, the rule 5, now, no matter your effort, no matter how best you try, users going to make errors. And there is no way you can avoid those. However, your design should always encourage error prevention, not error remediation. Like if things go south, there's no point in like, yes, if things go wrong, you display an error message, which is clear and communicates what is wrong. But your design should be done in a way that prevents user errors. You should guide users so that they avoid conscious and unconscious slips. Because when you're working and when you're trying to navigate an interface, you have a very short span of attention. You're just doing things very fast and trying to get it done and get it out of the way. And it is up to the designer to make sure that that is done in a way so that even if they're going really fast and being unconscious and distracted, it prevents errors from happening. So let's look at some examples for that. So this is the interface for the Southwest Airlines. And it has, let me maximize that. If you look at the date picker, it has some constraints. It says Southwest calendar widget for picking flight dates. Users have a constraint to prevent users from accidentally setting a nonsensical date range. It means if you have a departure date in the past, or if you're departing at 8, you cannot come back at 5th. Look at this. Even though it looks very automatic, it grays out those things. And you might be like, oh, well, okay, this is like, I see this all the time. Trust me, not all the time. I've seen flight pages that do not have this prevention, do not have this distinction, and you can't just like sometimes even go back in time. You might be wondering if I select a return date in the future, in the past, and try to search, yes, it's gonna fail. The backend is gonna come up with gibberish, and you cannot have that I don't know, maybe some even can have that in the backend. But even the well-designed backend would show an error. But why would you go that far? Why would you even allow that user to make such an input? Why would you even allow the user even think about it? If these are grayed out, he's not even going to think about it. He will know this is something I cannot do. Rather than allowing them to do that, whatever he pleases, and then letting them know in the future. So this is error prevention in the most proactive way. And when you go to a site that does not have those in place, it creates tension, stress you don't really need. Like click it, goes to the backend, says invalidate. It's such a bad experience, and this one is so much better. So prevent as much as possible. And also another thing is, even though it comes at just like, okay, yeah, I type in and Amazon gives a suggestion. But this is also an important aspect of the communication. Because you see, he's typing a wrong, he has a spelling. If you look at this one is a spelling problem. And he tries to correct it and provide recommendation based on it. It gives users comfort. And you might not, okay, oh, even if the product, even the simple product has a suggestion those days. Trust me, it does not. Even if it does have those suggestions, it does not course correct. The Amazon search not only provides recommendation, it course corrects the users. So two important things that's happening right now. And this modern interface, the ones we use at the Google and the Amazon, is so well designed, we take this for granted. And then we have our own system that does not care. And do not fall into this trap. Be conscious. Just because it is so common in the bigger sites does not mean you get away ignoring those tiny details, tiny bits. As once again, the systems I use do not have those in place. Just because they don't really care. Okay, let them type whatever, and then I'll do whatever I can. Another thing is the Google's Inbox app for iOS. Okay, and there is a chance to snooze emails. Like if you go to the email, you can go and snooze emails and then come back to it later. Now, what is so great about this? Well, it has good defaults. And good defaults prevents errors because you want to get it done so fast. It has a reasonable default. So whatever you do, and one of the great things about error prevention is provide defaults so that users don't even have to make a mistake. Do not have insensible, like if you have this one pre-filled or not pre-filled at all. These defaults can be improved so much with AI and machine learning these days. So you can even very accurately predict what is a good default for that person. So make use of all of that and come up with a system that takes care of the users without even having to do those clicks. Another thing is this is the Uber sign up page. And this is a very important part of the experience. This is how an American phone number. So it has to have the area code. It needs to have the whole thing. This is the area code, and this is the number. Now, you're having users enter phone numbers, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a 12-digit number. That is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's not a 12. That's 10. So a 10-digit number. That's what you have in, say, you're trying to design an UI, and that's the constraint you set. And the user comes up and enters something like this. Well, that's not an invalid phone number at all. he is just used to some conventions. He's trying to use brackets and those dashes. Now, if you have in place just a logic for handling candidate phone number and you reject those, what's going to happen? He's going to be pissed off. I mean, what the hell? I've done this before, so why are you rejecting my phone numbers? And would you go as far as to say special characters, a developer might say, special characters not allowed? Well, that is also a bad user experience. That is what an engineer would do and feel that this is the correct. It gives the right feedback. But this is a bad user experience. You have to give a lot of options. Also, even though the text says something else, what I said is also an important aspect of the UX. You should allow that kind of behavior that user is able to enter different formats. But this tag actually says about something even more important. You need to fit the user in. What do you mean fit the user in? Let's say he's typing 512-962-7354. He doesn't want to type all those things. Those things. He doesn't have time for this. He just types 512-962-7354. This is not very easy to read, and it's very difficult to differentiate the area code and the actual phone number. What you can have in place as he types along, you automatically insert those brackets and dashes to make it more readable. And rather than trying to enforce a format, you auto-enforce it. You just make it a bit easy for the person who's trying to enter the phone number. And how does it fit in with the error prevention? Well, the concept of error prevention, as we see it, if we decide that this is the format we're going to accept, and the user types in and doesn't have the time to type all those in, by automatically inserting those things, we prevent the user from making a mistake in the first place. And that is a good part of the error prevention. We started a little bit late, so I'm not going to go into any more rules today. We have a couple of minutes to cover, but I guess that's a good start. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.